Some sentences sound harmless, but in psychology, they reveal everything about how a person thinks about relationships. And when a woman says certain things repeatedly, it's not just a bad moment, it's a warning sign about the future. Most men ignore these signs because they hope things will change, but human behavior patterns rarely lie. Today, we're uncovering 5 things that, if a woman tells you, you should take very seriously, because these phrases often reveal deeper psychological patterns that can slowly destroy trust, respect, and emotional stability in a relationship. And the 5th one is the most dangerous because it sounds normal, but it hides a mindset that ruins many relationships. The first phrase is when she says, "That's just how I am." On the surface, this sounds innocent, but psychologically, this sentence can signal something deeper, a refusal to grow. Healthy relationships require adaptation. 2 people adjust, communicate, and improve over time. But when someone hides behind "that's just how I am," it often means they don't want to take responsibility for their behavior. Imagine this situation. You calmly explain that something she did hurt your feelings. Instead of discussing it, she shrugs and says, "Well, that's just how I am." At that moment, the conversation stops, growth stops, accountability disappears, and without accountability, problems repeat over and over again. But the next phrase is even more revealing. The second phrase is, "All my exes were crazy." Now think about the psychology behind that statement. If someone had one bad relationship, that's normal. If someone had 2 difficult relationships, that can happen too. But when every single ex is described as crazy, toxic, or terrible, it raises an important psychological question. What is the common denominator in all those relationships? Imagine you're getting to know someone and she tells story after story about how every man she dated was manipulative, jealous, or unstable. At first, you may feel sympathy, but over time you start noticing something strange. There's never any personal responsibility in those stories. She was always perfect. Everyone else was always the problem. Psychologists call this externalizing blame. And people who constantly blame others often repeat the same relationship patterns again and again. But the third phrase is where emotional manipulation often begins. The third phrase is, "If you really loved me, you would." This sentence is one of the most subtle forms of emotional pressure, because it links love with obedience. Instead of discussing needs openly, the person uses guilt to influence your decisions. Imagine you're not comfortable with something she asks you to do. Maybe it's canceling plans with friends or doing something that crosses your boundaries. Instead of respecting your feelings, she says, "If you really loved me, you would do it." Now the situation changes. The discussion is no longer about the request. It becomes a test of your love. This creates emotional pressure that slowly erodes personal boundaries. And when boundaries disappear, respect often disappears with them. But the 4th phrase reveals something even more serious. The 4th phrase is, "You're lucky to have me." Confidence in a relationship is healthy, but arrogance disguised as affection is not. When someone repeatedly reminds you that you're lucky to be with them, the message behind it is subtle but powerful. It suggests that the relationship is unequal, that one person is the prize, and the other person should feel grateful just to be there. Picture this scenario. You disagree about something small and she responds with, "You should be thankful I'm even with you." Suddenly the conversation isn't about solving the issue anymore, it becomes about power. Over time, this dynamic can slowly destroy self-respect and balance in the relationship. But the final phrase is the most dangerous of all, because many people don't recognize it at first. The 5th phrase is, "I hate drama, but drama always follows me." At first, this sounds like someone who simply had bad experiences, but psychologically, people who say this often unconsciously create the very chaos they claim to dislike. Human behavior tends to follow patterns. Someone who constantly finds themselves surrounded by conflict may unknowingly contribute to it. Imagine this pattern. There's always a problem with a friend, then a fight with a coworker, then tension with family members, then arguments in the relationship. Everywhere she goes, drama appears. And yet she insists she hates it. Psychologists often describe this as a drama cycle. Some people become so used to emotional chaos that calm relationships actually feel boring to them. And when peace feels boring, they unconsciously create tension just to feel something. But here's the deeper truth most people never talk about. None of these phrases alone automatically make someone a bad person. Everyone has moments of frustration or emotional reactions. The real warning sign is repetition. When these sentences appear again and again, they reveal patterns of thinking that shape how someone handles responsibility, conflict, and emotional power in a relationship. Healthy relationships work differently. When two emotionally mature people interact, their language reflects cooperation instead of control. Instead of saying, "That's just how I am," they say, "I'll try to work on that." Instead of blaming every past partner, they reflect on what they learned from previous relationships. Instead of using love as pressure, they respect boundaries and communicate openly. The words people choose reveal their mindset, and mindset shapes behavior over time. So the next time you hear one of these phrases, don't just focus on the words themselves. Watch the pattern behind them. Do they appear once in a stressful moment, or do they show up again and again, revealing how someone truly sees relationships? Because understanding human psychology isn't about judging people. It's about recognizing patterns before those patterns shape your future. And sometimes the smartest decision in life is noticing a warning sign early before it becomes a long story you wish you never had to experience. And here's where the psychology becomes even more interesting, because people rarely reveal their true mindset in one big dramatic moment. Instead, they reveal it slowly through small repeated phrases that most people ignore. Words may seem simple on the surface, but they often reflect deep emotional patterns built over years of behavior. For example, when someone constantly avoids responsibility by saying things like, "That's just how I am," the real issue isn't the sentence itself. The real issue is the mindset behind it. Psychologists call this a fixed identity defense. It's when a person protects their ego by refusing to change. Instead of improving the behavior, they protect the behavior. And over time, this creates a relationship where one person keeps adapting, while the other stays exactly the same. But there's another psychological layer most men never think about. Consistency reveals character. Anyone can say the right words occasionally, anyone can apologize once or twice. But consistent language patterns reveal how someone truly views relationships, responsibility, and emotional power. Think about this for a moment. Healthy people usually say things like, "I didn't handle that well. Let's figure this out. I understand your point." These phrases show self-awareness and emotional maturity. But unhealthy patterns often sound very different. "It's not my fault. You're too sensitive. You're lucky to have me." These phrases slowly shift the emotional balance of the relationship. Instead of two people solving problems together, one person becomes the judge and the other becomes the one constantly defending themselves. And when that dynamic begins, something important starts to disappear: respect. Because respect in a relationship grows from mutual accountability. When both people admit mistakes, trust grows stronger. But when one person always avoids responsibility, the relationship slowly turns into emotional imbalance. There's also something called psychological conditioning that happens in unhealthy relationships. At first, when you hear a manipulative phrase, you question it. But after hearing it again and again, the brain slowly adapts. You start doubting yourself. You start explaining yourself more. You start trying harder just to keep the peace. And without realizing it, you begin accepting behavior that once felt completely wrong. This is why recognizing these patterns early is so important. Not because relationships should be perfect, but because healthy relationships feel safe, balanced, and respectful. They don't make you feel constantly guilty. They don't make you question your own worth. They don't require you to shrink yourself just to avoid conflict. Instead, they create an environment where both people grow. Both people listen. Both people take responsibility. And here's something fascinating about human psychology. Emotionally healthy people rarely need to prove their value by saying things like, "You're lucky to have me." Why? Because their actions already show their value. Confidence doesn't need to announce itself. It shows up in calm behavior, respectful communication, and the ability to handle conflict without turning it into emotional warfare. So the next time you hear phrases like the ones we discussed today, don't panic, but pay attention. Ask yourself a simple question: is this a one-time emotional reaction, or is this a pattern that keeps repeating? Because patterns tell the truth that words sometimes hide. And the earlier you recognize those patterns, the easier it becomes to make smart decisions about who truly deserves a place in your life. At the end of the day, relationships should add peace to your life, not constant confusion. They should make you feel respected, not controlled. And sometimes the most powerful psychological skill you can develop is this: the ability to recognize warning signs early, and the courage to walk away before those signs turn into years of regret.